prison pipeline, because I feel like both those subjects tie in with each other. Actually, all three kind of do. Um, so if you'd like to go ahead and start speaking about that, Dora, you can. I mean, mass incarceration in America is absolutely insane. We have more a larger prison population than any other country, and I feel like this is something that people really
We
deserve.
actually represent, I believe it's
Go ahead.
83% of the global populace for prison content. We represent more than all major developed countries put together. Like most of our population, somewhere around I think 60%, is actually considered to be either current or former incarcerated individual. Like especially in a country where our right to vote is at the whims of governments. Should we have a record? Felons in some states cannot vote in state or federal elections. Like that's silencing of an entire chunk of the population who, yeah, I'm sure if you gave them a right to vote, would have something to say about the justice system.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything
I,
else? Well, go ahead,
I
Meg.
definitely agree. What is it, John Tell? You might have to correct me. We make up, what is it, 5% of the world's population, yet 25% of the world's prison population?
Yeah,
That is a
yeah, I
problem
believe
for
it's something
sure.
like that. Yeah.
But also, a lot of incarcerated people are included in like census or population. So it corresponds with an increase of representation for the city and the state, but not for the people who are actually like making up those numbers, which I think is an important factor when talking about like
Yeah, we
felons
were
and people who are incarcerated not having a chance to sleep or to vote.
we were talking
You
about that the
know,
other day on our shows because it's important people realize like how dispersed, for example, black and brown people are, when you count them into rural populations where a lot of these prisons are, for example, in Pennsylvania. And one person on one of our shows, shout out to Purple Room Politics, was speaking of like black people, spreading out and planting their feet, all over America, which is true already. There's black people everywhere in every county, damn near in America. However, how much power do they actually hold and influence do they actually hold? We're only a small portion of the population. So like, where do we fall? Should we concentrate our power in the communities that we're already in to combat dispersal of our quote unquote criminals, like when they're put into areas like this in rural areas, and that does play a large part in how voting plays out as well. And I think a lot of people don't realize that either.
you know, what trips me out about is what people don't understand is like if you really look at the data and the statistics since like let's say even 1980 to 2022, that's like what 40 years, yeah, because I'm 45, born in 77, so yeah, so 42 years, and you literally it's 500% increase, but the only thing that has changed has been in sentencing, law, and policy, not crime rates. So how do you decipher that when if we're going by crime rates, it hasn't changed, but policy has? Now, who has policy changed for? That's what nobody wants to talk about because they change policy for poor people. I just got into it with, I can't even say got into it with a person, but sitting there, it's midterm elections are over with, and everybody's so gassed up because Minnesota got the trifecta. Well, I'm sorry to tell people, but Democrats are the reason why we have mass incarceration in Minnesota, why we have the things that we have, because it's failed policies. And regardless, that's the problem. People want to say that it's all about voting. No, it's about being an informed voter when you go to the ballot. Because we have to start fighting for voter education instead of voter registration.
Yes, bro, I completely understand. It's all policies, protocols, procedures, and how things are followed through. And I agree with, not only voting and registering to vote, but voter knowledge and knowing what you're talking about. Because we can vote all day, but what if we don't know exactly what we're voting for?
I highly advise reading the bills themselves directly rather than looking at voter information pamphlets, because if you look at the back of those, they're sponsored. You're getting the opinion of the following companies and organizations rather than being able to formulate your own by reading the text. Which
no, you make a very good point, Dora, because of the simple fact of what are you reading? Is it left? Is it right? Is it moderate? Is it progressive? You know what I'm saying? There's so many different ideologies out there about politics. So, I mean, it really does depend on, it really matters on where you go get your information from.
I also want to point out that, go ahead.
I personally, when I look at these bills, I skip over who signed, wrote, endorsed, etc., and I look at the meat of the text. Because, quite frankly, I could care less who penned it. If it's a bad bill, it's a bad bill. And that's one of the reasons a lot of people find me strange. So I get people who think I'm conservative, people who think I'm liberal, people think I'm all over the map. I'm an anarchist. I vote on what makes the most sense. But one of the things I found out about voting is that in some instances, I don't know how far out this actually becomes truth, but in some instances, our votes literally don't even matter. Case in point, the last presidential run, the primaries, Bernie should have actually had the ticket to that based on the number of actual votes for him in electoral positions, and didn't get it because I believe it was Iowa, New Hampshire, and one other state who actually went so far as to sue the DNC in the Supreme Court for voter tampering because they just ditched out a bunch of Bernie votes. And when presented in court, the DNC responded with, well, that would work if we were a government agency, but we're not, so we're not bound by their rules. We're actually a privately owned group, organization, who owns those votes, owns everything about it. We don't even read your votes. We tabulate based upon what our investors tell us. And if you think it's any different with the RNC, go ahead and ask them. And the judges got a little uppity about that at first and then started flipping through the paperwork and went, they're right. Technically, they're right. I can't do anything. And the Democratic National Convention won in court by admitting that our votes don't matter for shit, at least when it comes to the primaries and selecting who we want to go to be president. Take that information how you will and go from there. Still get out and vote. It's got to matter somewhere.
Good point. I totally agree with you, Dara. I do want to point out that poverty and capitalism play a huge role in keeping people too busy and burnt out and tired to stay informed. And definitely see that as the system working as it should. It's hard to sit down and find the bills and read the bills one by one if you have 1, 2, 3 jobs and other things going on. And that just is another massive barrier to being an informed voter and getting out that information.
Usually they're openly posted if you just go to your House and Senate and local state Senate respectively, right on their home pages, and you can just scroll through and pick all of them that you want to look at.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that you can't find them if you know that information, but I am saying that there are so many people in poverty right now that don't know that information, that probably are not listening to us right now.
Those who are listening and have time, learn and then teach your neighbors.
Yes, there we go. That's
information, guys. It's key. Knowledge is power.
Oh, sorry guys, I was just trying to promote this.
Oh, good. No, because I'm sitting there looking at numbers, and it says mass incarceration directly impacts millions of people, but just how many, in what ways? And these numbers are from 2020, and it says incarcerated people in prison or jail, 1.9 million, formerly incarcerated, state or federal, 4.9 million, ever convicted of a felony, 19 million, have a criminal record, 79 million, and have an immediate family member who has ever been to jail or prison, 113 million adults. How many people are in America?
Ten million people are going to jail every year in America. Like, that's insane. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And it's not. And you did mention that the Democrats are responsible for a lot of people being in jail. And I was just thinking about that 1994 crime bill that the Clintons signed off. The Clintons helped to push. And then
that Joe Biden authored.
Yep, and Biden. Yeah.
No, don't leave Biden ass out of that. Do not leave his ass out of that.
Be coming up with bonehead bills that affect our criminal justice system that Biden personally had a hand in. Don't forget the very historically racistly utilized stop and sniff, search policy in New York.
I mean, also the Reagan administration too, though. Like, so the Republicans definitely had a hand in it too, because the Reagan administration is responsible for a lot of people who are put into the prison system, and the war on drugs that they had as well. Everybody's getting locked up for nonviolent offenses. Like, half the prison population is nonviolent offenses right now.
Absolutely. And Democrats keep trying to cater to Republicans' tendency to do the law and order, tough on crime thing. Well, there's two different ways. Either you go out and you put more money towards police forces so that they arrest more people, or with policies like the stop and sniff, or you get more laws passed so that more people can be arrested for shit that they've already done before. And they do both. So yeah, it's definitely both Democrats and Republicans. Like, it's disgusting.
I just wanted to say thank you for using my version of the term that killed me. I love it.
I'm going to steal that, or at least, liberate it for all people.
Oh, I love it. One of the things I think is really interesting is if you stop and look at not so much the nonviolent crimes, but violent crimes statistics, where do you get the most of them, particularly and especially gun violence? You find them in blue cities that have extremely stringent gun restrictions, at which point you get some really exotic guns too, which is kind of strange in and of itself. But the places where, like, Arizona has almost no gun violence. And then again, Arizona's policy as far as a gun carry permit, concealed or otherwise, is the Constitution is your permit. Like, that's their policy on it. No restrictions, no nothing like that. Just straight go Dirty Harry and have fun. Just don't kill anybody. Like, I'm not for one side or the other on anything in particular, but that is a fact. Like, the more stringent the gun restrictions, the more violent crime involving guns you find, which in turn becomes a perpetuating cycle. In a place where you got everybody carrying, one of the instances you don't really see much is somebody getting crazy with a gun because, well, everybody is carrying and everybody will put you down. A little Old West, but if it works.
Yeah, it's right. So I was just looking at the races of people that are in prison. 1.5% Asian, 38.4% Black, 2.6% Native American, and 57.6% white. So the fact that there's like 40% like Black people, like, that's just it's disgusting. Like it's disgusting. It's such a targeted system.
Okay, but let me ask you a question, right? Because there's 57% of white people in prison. Why does that 38% shock you?
Because the ratio of races in the country.
Yeah, if you compare it with the number of black people in the country versus white people, period.
Right,
versus-
black
No,
people.
I know, but it's when you put out them numbers, you got to clarify that the America is only 13% black.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
that right there.
right. That's what I was looking for. You got to put out all the numbers. You can't just 57, 38, 1.5, because America is 13% black. We're a minority, but we're a majority in prison.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Well, so like the fact that it's 38.4% black inmates, and then there's only 13% of the population in America being black, that's 3 times the amount. I mean, so like you're 3.5 times more likely to be put in prison if you're a black man versus a white man, and that's just disgusting.
Because of unfair policing tactics and ways that laws are enforced.
I mean, stop and think, guys. How many people do we know who have been pulled over for DWB? For those that don't know, it's driving while black. Like my own sister has.
Or living while black.
Or guarding while
Walking
black.
down the street.
Right.
Purchasing while black.
Having a Subway sandwich while black, like Casey Goodson.
Shopping while
Eating
black.
Skittles while black.
Having a fucking air freshener while black.
Having tea bags in your garbage can while black.
Let's just
We
go
really gotta
back
stop
to
for those.
living while black, because that's the most important one right there. Like we can't even, like, I can't breathe is such a powerful statement, because we can't even fucking breathe without having to deal with racism or be burdened by oppression and discrimination and prejudice 24/7. Like, there are some people in this country that don't even have to think about it or have never had to deal with it or ever won't. But for me, I can't exist without it. That's the reality of this life, this world, this current life for me right now.
I want to read something real quick, because this is so. In America today, 1 of 4 black men. So if you put 4 black people or whatever, 1 of 4 black people have a chance of going to prison during their lifetime. Hispanic, 1 in 6. White, 1 in 23. That's crazy.
That speaks volumes on where we're at in America right now.
It definitely does. It definitely does.
Those percentile dynamics get really funky when you start separating it by gender too. Like if you think just black in general is bad, the population percentile specifically amongst females is even more ridiculous.
Well, when you're looking at, so if you even break it down to like gender, by just birth, Hispanics 5.1, white 4.4, but black men 28%. That's pretty high. So.
Breaking into age dynamics, you'll find that it's mostly between like 16 and 30, particularly with black people, versus mostly from their 30s up for white people.
Hey, Dora, is there any way you can make your mic just a little bit louder? By the way, and
Yeah. So one of the first things that you got to notice with the school to prison pipeline concept is, particularly, especially in lower income neighborhoods, look at these schools and then look at prisons. These things are alike. In the rich neighborhoods, look at the school and look at prisons. These things are not alike. It's very, very obvious when you get into cities like LA, you know, like it's, dude, you got about as much security going in as you would in a prison. You got barbed wire fences, you got armed guards, you got metal detectors, you've got all kinds of insanity. Cool. You know, it's bonkers, and it's been that way. People like they kind of think, you know, maybe it's a recent thing. No, it's been that way since like the 90s, and like that's just how it is. And I'm not talking just high school. I mean, like all the way down the chain to elementary. It's ridiculous. And further than that is that they set you up on similar routines. You're eating basically the same food from the same companies, no less, that do the food services for both. You've got the fact that, especially in lower income institutions, you'll have far fewer students put on a path towards college. Most of them get put into disciplinary classes for problems that half the time have nothing to do with any of their even actual behavior, but merely their situations in life. This puts them into a position where some of them literally get put on probation, like criminal justice system, juvie probation, because of attendance, because of their taking care of family at home. Like it's absolutely insanity. And one of the reasons, like I said before, I mentioned that if you look at the age gaps for who the most incarcerated people are, really speaking, is 18 and 18 being protectable. Very much so. A group of teens, like it's, they're arresting these kids, and if you look at a lot of them, it's not even necessarily related to outside of school activities. It's all inside, where they're getting arrested, where they're being put directly into the system. Heaven help you if you add in foster care or any of that noise. A lot of the troubled teen schools that they send you to, they're residential schools. Like that's a whole nother bag of worms for a different night. But all of these things all end up with significantly increasing as you go, progressing rates of incarceration later on in life. And it starts with the school system. Like the school system court ordered me into a residential school when I was a kid. And I didn't stay there. I ended up on probation.
There's so much abuse that happens in the foster care system too. And it just goes unchecked. And I feel like a lot of these like foster care parents only look at these children as a paycheck because they, you know, obviously they get money from the state for having these foster kids. So the more kids they have, the more of a paycheck it is, and they don't actually care to be genuinely good foster parents as well. And then to add on to what you were saying about like juveniles in the system, I think a lot of times, like, you know, they'll offer probation terms for juveniles, and people will be like, oh, hey, that's better than jail time. But then they're stuck in this system for, you know, years, the probation system, going in and out of jail and being stuck in and out of jail. Like, it's just a revolving door.
All right. You can do it. Freedom. I like this. I like this. Yes. Freedom. Freedom is in your mind.